In the early 1980s, parents of DPT vaccine-injured children went head-to-head with the mandatory vaccination lobby led by the pharmaceutical industry, public health, and medical trade. And we managed to secure historic acknowledgement in the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986 that vaccine safety should be made a national priority. That accomplishment was based on the fact that federally licensed and recommended vaccines for children, which are mandated by states, can and do injure and kill a minority of them. Acknowledgement of that inconvenient truth in the late 20th century, a truth still often denied by those conducting the business of vaccination, planted the first seeds that grew into a national and international censorship industrial complex in the 21st century, which targets not only vaccine hesitancy, but a cross-section of political, economic, cultural value, and belief issues. In this report, I have told the story from an eyewitness perspective of a mother whose child was injured by a crude pertussis vaccine in 1980 that could have been made safer. And as co-founder of a charity where I worked for 14 years to get a less reactive pertussis vaccine licensed for America's babies in 1996. And as author of referenced articles and books, public presentations for government vaccine advisory committees, congressional and state legislature testimony, television debates and video commentaries that have been posted on MVIC.org's 4 websites and in other forums on the internet since 1995. I've connected the dots so the reader can appreciate the scope and influence of the great wealth and political power held by those who have built the spider web of a global infrastructure institutionalizing censorship of freedom of thought, speech, and conscience about vaccination and health, especially in the new digital public square. I provide readers with live links to papers, articles, and documents using language to denigrate individuals and groups that criticize vaccine policy and law that were published by or under the guidance of individuals associated with the United Nations, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Director of National Intelligence, Department of State, Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Defense, Department of Health and Human Services, the U.S. Surgeon General, and other government agencies. There are links to published evidence that big philanthropic foundations and think tanks, such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Bloomberg Philanthropies, World Economic Forum, and Aspen Institute, as well as organizations representing big pharma, like the Sabin Vaccine Institute and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, have funded and collaborated with universities and government agencies and affiliated for-profit media companies like NewsGuard to urge censorship of freedom of thought and speech. Some have called for physicians sharing information with parents and patients about vaccine risks and failures that does not conform with government policy to lose their medical licenses, and for Americans who decline vaccines for themselves or their children to be sued and fined and arrested. Before being blacklisted, MVIC was in touch with hundreds of thousands of Americans every day on major social media platforms, and we had a stable donor base. Now, if anyone shares MVIC's well-referenced vaccine information or talks about vaccine concerns on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, their accounts are in danger of being canceled, so they can't have conversations with friends and family members online. Mothers tell us that if they ask a doctor a question about vaccine reactions or want to alter the CDC's vaccination schedule and give their infants and children fewer vaccines on one day, they are threatened or thrown out of the doctor's office, and their children are denied medical care. A lot of people tell us they are afraid that one day they will be forced to get vaccines they don't want, or be fired from their jobs, or denied medical insurance, or a passport, or blocked from entering a hospital when they or a loved one gets sick, or worse. We all remember what was done to Americans in the name of public health and national security during the COVID-19 pandemic emergency declaration. I was devastated to learn that government officials have worked with political operatives, corporations, the media, and academic institutions to characterize public conversations about vaccine risks and failures as a threat to national security in order to label me and others as anti-vaxxers, using words like malignant and domestic threat actor for the purpose of blacklisting and justifying the silencing of our voices in the public square. This is not the America my parents and I grew up in. It is not the America I want my children and grandchildren to grow up in. And I am not alone. I know that my life's work and the mission of MVIC to prevent vaccine injuries and deaths through public education in memory of the vaccine injured is, and always has been, just. And I know the truth will shine bright and clear when all the evidence about this shameful era in U.S. history is revealed by others with access to far more information than I have. In the meantime, I and the staff and volunteers at MVIC will not be silent and surrender to the censorship industrial complex. As we have done for 41 years, we will stand and defend the natural right of all Americans to freely choose when and for what reason we are willing to risk our life or the life of our minor child without being punished by the state. Because if the state can tag, track down, and force individuals against their will to be injected with biologicals of known and unknown toxicity today, then there will be no limit on which individual freedoms the state can take away in the name of the greater good tomorrow. Please read my report and share it with everyone you know. Join MVIC's mission and take action to educate your friends, family, and community about vaccination, health, and autonomy. Please make a donation to MVIC during this 14th annual Vaccine Awareness Week because we cannot do this alone.